morning, Tammy.
Good morning.
How are you?
Pretty good. And yourself?
I'm great. Thank you so much for sending me your lesson plans. On time, early. I'm excited to see your lessons on early American Indian groups. I want to tell you right now that your lesson plans were so thorough and I would think you were on PA3 instead of on PA1. They were really outstanding. You included details. Every single thing that I needed was included in these lesson plans, so thank you very much. I'm not going to be able to have great eye contact with you as much as I'd like to because I'm going to be typing, responses as well, so we can have a documentation of this. Last year on your pre-PA, your reinforcement, or the thing that you did outstanding, was activities and materials, and judging by these, you're going to get another outstanding score there because you have a wide range of activities. Your refinement was academic feedback, what you said back and forth to the students. We were talking about wanting more targeted feedback, more specific feedback, focused feedback. So hopefully during your lesson this time, you'll have that in your mind, like when you do the questioning. So now I'm just going to ask you, what do you want your students to be able to do at the end of the lesson?
Well, by the end of the lesson, I'm hoping that the students will be able to talk about the different types of Indians that were in Texas. I would also like them to be able to describe a couple of characteristics of the different groups, whether they were nomadic or sedentary, because those are two key parts of this lesson objectives. And those are, I just want them to understand the different groups that were in Texas.
Okay.
The fact that there are still Indians in Texas today
That live
as
here.
well.
That live here.
Because
Okay.
some think
they're gone. That they're not here anymore. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. I'd just like you to go through and tell me all about your lesson. You don't have to read your lesson plan. If you want to use it for reference, just kind of going through and hitting the high points of your lesson.
Okay, so basically we're going to be talking about the different Indians in Texas, and I want to have it make sense to them, and I want it to be meaningful to them. So I'm excited about the opener for my lesson. I'm going to be playing a Comanche tribal song to kind of get their attention, get them pulled in, like, what is that? Like, I just want it to be their attention getter.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to see how they react to that.
I love that you use music because that really does help them focus and it gets them excited. So I really love that you brought the music in. I thought that was outstanding.
Definitely. I think it'll be a natural, attention getter instead of having to, call them to attention. I think if they were even quietly talking and I started playing it, they would, quieten and pay attention on their own. So I'm just calling their attention to that and making that music relevant to the lesson and real life, like explaining how, we today, have our own cultures and we have our own types of music and dances and things like that. Well, the Indians did too. They have their own, types of music and dances. And while it's different, it's still, part of their culture, just like ours. So basically that, and I'm going to read from a book called Indians Who Live in Texas to go more in detail about the different Indian groups. And then I'm going to have them work on a foldable that they're going to put in their social studies notebook so that they can go back and use it as a reference, in the future.
Tell me about the social studies notebook. What exactly is that?
So we have different types of notebooks in our classroom, like reading, writing. We also have social studies where we put important information in there, or they have practice questions in there or responses, and they're relating to that subject. So in our social studies notebook, we have different maps talking about the different regions of Texas, and basically it's just encompassing the high points of social studies.
So it's almost like a textbook they're creating. Like a textbook they're creating.
Definitely.
That's great.
Yep.
So after the foldable?
After the foldable, then they're going to work on a group activity because they're each in groups at their different tables. So based on the table that they're at, that's going to be their group. And so they'll each have a Venn diagram to work on for themselves, but it's going to be a group discussion project where they're going to talk about it and discuss, where do you think this one goes? Where do you think that one goes? And they'll be able to reference their foldable where they can find the information, because they'll be comparing two of the different Indian groups that we discussed.
I like that that they'll, be using something they've created, and then they'll be able to reference that again later in that social studies notebook. So that's really, I think that's a great idea. All right. Tell me the objective, as if you were talking to the students. How are you, basically your I can statement. How are you going to say that to the students?
So basically I would say something to the effect of, I can identify and locate different American Indian tribes in Texas and discuss the lifestyles of each.
That's great. That's really what you're doing. How will you know they've mastered it? I'm talking about assessment piece. How will you, and you may have pieces building up, you may have, formative and then a summative. How are you going to know that they mastered that objective?
So for the pre and post assessment, it's the same one, and I kind of have the key points in there, identify the American Indian groups and basically key vocabulary, and throughout the lesson we're going to be hitting on each of those, and I'm going to be reinforcing it, like they're not knowing that that's what it's going to be about, but once they take their post test, I'll be able to see, who really understood and who really didn't. But after they'll each complete a post assessment on their own, I'll collect them, and then we'll review the same post assessment on the smartboard together, so that we'll be able to discuss it, and if anyone had any misconceptions about the answers to the questions, we'll be able to resolve it and clear up the information so that they do hopefully understand it at that point.
Will you use a foldable for assessment as well? Any assessment piece, like when they're creating their foldable, will that be a part of what you see they understand it?
Well, as they're making the foldable, we'll be going through the slides on the smartboard and talking about the key information, and while we're going through the slides, they'll be writing down. I'll put my example up there as a model and be like, okay, we're going to add this information because it's most important.
Right. I like that you're modeling. So your mentor teacher will also be circulating, so they'll have support while you're doing the main instruction. All right. On your student achievement chart, your pre-assessment, what did you find? Any discoveries on that?
Well, I found that the majority of the classroom was in the approaches and meets. So the good thing was there weren't a whole lot that fell far below. There was one who exceeded. They just blasted through the assessment, and I was excited about that, but the majority of them were at approaches or meets, which also excites me because that means I have something to work with them on, and hopefully they'll all, at least be at meets by the end of the
So you'll be able to tie your content that you're presenting to prior knowledge, which is excellent. What about the student who exceeded? Do you have alternative plans or enrichment, something that you can provide for that student? Have you provided something that they'll be able to work on in case they sail through it real quickly?
If they sail through it all and they're done and they're just confident about it, I'm going to ask them to go back and look through their foldable, reread things, and maybe quiz themselves, like read it and close it and maybe quiz themselves, just to get ready for that post-assessment, to make sure that they're really understanding it.
Okay. You may want to think about some type of, maybe providing some type of little enrichment activity. It could be just something that ties to it that maybe extends it a little bit, a higher order question. Maybe have them create something. Talk about, if you were one of the Indian groups in Texas, what would be something that, you could create. It could be a song, it could be a poem, it could be artwork, it could be anything, just to enrich that and maybe have them focus on one little group. Maybe have, they could even use that book. You're talking about probably 1 to 2 students, I would think. So that might be something you could loan them that book if you needed to, that they could use and maybe create something. So you might want to look at your blooms and kind of look at those higher order things and see if you can come up with a couple of little activities. It doesn't sound like it's going to be, a lengthy period of time, but something that can instill and enrich. I think that would be a good idea. So you know that they're going to pass, you know that they'll master mastered the objective by the assessment that you're giving them. And let's see, tell me about the methods you're going to use as you present instructional content.
Well, while I'm presenting the content, like, my first thing is just to bring up the groups and bring it up and see how they react to that. Like, oh, I recognize that, or oh, like, I have no idea what that is. I planned on having them repeat each group, like the caddo, like have them repeat it, because they might look at the word and it might be, you know, Chinese, then it might be foreign language. So I'm gonna have them repeat each one just to get them comfortable with saying the different groups. And then as we go through the books, I'm gonna, you know, question them on things we read, like, have you heard of this before? What do you think this means? And then kind of clear up the information for them, just to make sure, I guess, kind of informally quizzing them throughout, you know, the reading in the book and then the slides, just to make sure they're really understanding it.
Okay. Activities and materials that will be used. Let's go through those. Tell me about the different activities you're going to do, maybe in a little more detail.
Okay, so the different activities we're going to do are the foldable, where there's 6 little tabs, and I have an example right here as my model. And so we're going to write the different tribe groups on there.
Right.
It'll be pre-cut, and they'll already have it glued in,
Okay.
so that as soon as we get to that point, we can jump right into the content, and I don't have to worry about, you know.
That's a great idea. So before you even start this lesson, you'll have that prepped and ready to go. That's great.
Yeah.
That'll maximize your time for
Definitely.
instruction.
Definitely. We just want to have it ready to go, so we don't have to worry about that. We can
It
just
sounds
kind of-
like they're used to, they have such a routine with that book. That's great. You have these Venn diagrams, sentence strips.
Yes, for the Venn diagram, they're gonna have, each child will have a plastic baggie with the different sentence strips cut in there. So they'll have options, like, where does this one go? And they can either put it on the Comanche side, delete mine Apache, or, you know.
Now, is that gonna be individual or group?
They each have to do it. They each have their own to
Each
work
have their
on,
own
but
strip.
they're working as a group. So
Excellent. I
I wanna
like
make sure
that.
everyone's, you know.
I love that, and I love that you kind of get the best of both worlds with that. I love that. Let's switch to expectations for classroom behavior. How are you going to, you know, handle disruptions, strategies that you use?
Well, before we get started on each different activity, we're gonna discuss the champs, which is what our school goes by at least.
Yes.
So I, like, in my slideshow, before we start the next activity, I'll have the champs posted on the board. And as we're going through that lesson, or through the thing, like as we read the book, the champs will stay on the board. As they're working on the Venn diagram, the champs for that will stay on the board. So for each activity, it'll stay on the board, just as a constant reminder, like, what should you be doing right now? What should you not be doing right now? And if, you know, if they were to get, and we're gonna review it, like, what are our expectations for this activity, and go through each one. But if they were to be getting it in hand and not following the expectations, I would remind them, oh, you know.
I love
What
that
is-
you incorporated it into your slideshow. I love that you did that. And when it changes, you'll have a chance to kind of talk about that change, and
Just to
so the
remind
students
them
are aware.
the changes for that activity, and just so they're aware. And
I love that. I love that you incorporated that. What if someone gets off task? What are you going to do? What are your plans?
if they're just not doing what they're supposed to be doing, I'll think back to, you know, what I had stated they should be doing, and I'll ask them, what should you be working on right now? Should we be at a level, you know, 4 or a level 0 or a level 1? What, and they'll respond to it, I think, you know, level 0, level 1. I think they'll respond to it, and if they don't, then, you know, I'll just remind them, well, we're supposed to be at a level 0 right now. This is independent work. You shouldn't be messing with your friend. You shouldn't be screaming across the room. This is what you should be doing. So just kind of reinforcing and reminding them of the expectation.
Sounds like you've already had a little practice, just a little. Okay. Do you have planned questions to check for understanding and thought about adjustments you may have to make if they don't understand?
Well, throughout the lesson, I'm gonna, you know, vocabulary. I want to make sure they're understanding that. And if, there's crickets in the room, no one's understanding, maybe I can ask it in a different way. Or, kind of give them a little start to it, like, what did we say when we talked about this? Or is this what we said it was? Or, just kind of trying to get
An extra
into it.
prompt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's correct. Are there any students you're gonna have to make modifications for?
I don't believe so.
Not in this classroom. And we've talked about enrichment and extension already for the students who finish early. Is there anything else you want me to be aware of before I see your lesson and instruction?
There were just a few students. We got a new student last week, and I've only been with her a couple of days,
Right.
so I'm not sure what she knows and what she doesn't know, and I'm not sure how fast she'll pick up on this kind of material or not.
Okay.
So we do have that new student, which I'll, be on top of to make sure she's
Right.
keeping up. There is one student, I'm not sure, there's that one independent activity with the Venn diagram. Maybe if he's working with a group, he'll be okay, but for every assignment, every day, he always says, I don't get it, I don't get it. So I'm not sure if
Be
he'll.
sure and point him out to me, and, I'll keep an eye on him and kind of see how things are going with him, and probably, I would imagine your mentor teacher is probably going to be assisting with him as well. So in closing, let's review real quickly what's going to happen, just quickly, just in your head.
Okay, so opening comments with music. Then we'll move on to discussing the different tribes by reading through the textbook, or not textbook, but the children's book.
Right.
Then we'll move on to the slideshow and filling out the foldable. Then we'll dismiss them to work on their Venn diagram group project. And then we'll bring them back in with the post-assessment and then reviewing it